Dementia is like a continuous exercise in what they tell you to do in acting school all the time, which is to be in the moment. People with dementia are in the moment all the time. They aren't lost. They are somewhere.
As the new film Familiar Touch opens, we meet Ruth, an independent and self-assured octogenarian who is embarking on a journey of both mind and body. Her body is moving into a memory care facility. Her mind is evolving in ways that are hard for her family to understand. But as played by acclaimed actress Kathleen Chalfant, we vividly experience this journey through Ruth's eyes. And Ruth is never lost. She is just where she is in the moment. Inspired by her experiences as a caregiver, writer and director Sarah Friedland has directed a coming-of-age story and imbued Familiar Touch with a spirit and depth that avoids the usual tropes that we associate with films about cognitive decline. Filmed almost entirely at a retirement community with members and staff of the facility both behind and in front of the camera, Familiar Touch feels real in a way that most films can only hope to achieve. The film premiered at the Venice Film Festival, where it was awarded Best Director and Best Actress prizes and is now opening in theaters across the U.S. We love this movie and are so happy that writer-director Sarah Friedland and actress Kathleen Chalfant were able to join us to talk about the making of Familiar Touch. So sit back and join us for our conversation on Inside the Arthouse, starting now.
Hi, my name is Greg Lumley.
And I'm Raphael Sparge.
And welcome to another episode of Inside the Arthouse. Today we're going to talk about the new film, A Familiar Touch. It's directed by Sarah Friedland and stars Kathleen Chalfant. Thank you for joining us here.
Thanks for having us.
We're very happy to be here.
Sarah, this is such a beautiful film, and it is. I was described as a coming of age film, which I loved. It is. Your first feature, but it is also so accomplished. I guess I wonder if you could sort of talk about your process of sort of getting here to sort of tell this story and how it came about for you.
Yeah, I mean, it unfolded over a decade of trying to kind of come to the story and refine it and then finally make the film. The earliest kernel was experiences with my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, who was a poetry editor. And when she developed dementia, she became nonverbal, and my family started talking about her in the past tense and grieving that transition. And at the time, I was first starting to study dance because I'm also a choreographer and make dance films, and that's the practice that I'm coming to feature filmmaking from. And I would visit her and was so struck by her physicality and her physical presence, and that gap between the person that we were speaking about in absentia, because her language was no longer there, and the person who was sort of still there very much in these other forms of sense making and selfhood. That space really haunted me for a long time. Cut to many years later, I'd been working for different filmmakers and kind of doing every entry-level job you can on a set, and reached a point where I felt like if I want to make humanist dramas that aren't about people on a set, I maybe need to meet some humans outside of film production. But I needed a day job. So I answered an ad for a sculptor with dementia who needed a caregiver. And that led to me working as a care worker for about 3.5 years part-time. And that job really shifted my perspective on aging, on care labor, and specifically on our age identity. I think something that was a real entry point for Kathy and I in talking about Ruth was that Ruth would be all ages and no ages. She wouldn't just be fixed as a sort of old woman, that she would have access to her child self, her teenage self, her middle-aged self, and that we would craft this character study together that allowed us to see all of the Ruths that she had been and how they all kind of coalesce in the moment. And that would be sort of a part of the coming of age story itself. That I think the coming of age genre, when we think about it for younger adults, there's this idea that somebody shifts, they become a new person, they transition, right? And a young person is becoming an adult, but we never say in that transition that they're no longer themselves. And we do for older adults. I think it's one of the ways that ageism plays out in our narratives, is that we talk about older adults as slipping away, as vanishing, declining, as sort of losing themselves. And so I wanted, as a young person myself, to kind of sort of co-opt and steal that genre away from youth and use it to tell the story of a woman woman who is coming of age in a different way, in a different moment in her life.
It's beautifully told, and really plays against all our expectations from these types of films, which are sort of tragic and or painful. And it's not that there aren't moments of trauma in the film, but overall it really has just kind of a life-affirming quality because Ruth is adjusting and learning and becoming a different version of herself. And a lot of that is a tribute, Kathleen, to your performance. In terms of study or research or anything, how did you sort of get in shape to play this role?
Well, my best friend is the playwright Sybil Pearson, and Sybil has dementia. 2 years ago, when we made the film, Sybil was in about the place that Ruth was. Mm-hmm. And so there is a way in which finding Ruth was Sybil's gift to me. And when I first saw the movie, it's hard to watch yourself on the screen, I find, and I didn't know whether I'd be able to watch the whole movie. Soon after it started, I realized how much of Sybil was in this character, and it made it possible for me to watch it.
I've seen you on stage so many times, and you are an extraordinary actress, and I revere you. And of course, working on a play is a long, attenuated process of rehearsal and previews and all of that. This is I understand you shot this in 18 days.
18 and a half.
18 and a half days. Pardon me.
Tuesday. We started on Tuesday afternoon.
That half a day
was our first shot.
Yeah. And you were right up against the strike. Obviously one lives a life to be able to kind of really prepare to do something like this, but you are in every frame just translucent, and you're just so present. There's a 60-foot dive into a Dixie cup for any sort of film moment, but there is a sort of a level of kind of just surrender at every moment. There's no effort. There's literally no anything other than you just being present. And I guess I just wondered how you navigated those scenes and how you came to those scenes, particularly with a short shooting, even with the half day, a short shooting schedule. How did you navigate that?
Well, dementia is like a sort of continuous exercise in what they tell you to do in acting school all the time, which is to be in the moment, because people with dementia are in the moment all the time. They aren't lost. They are somewhere. And so one of the joys of playing Ruth is that she was entirely present at all different times of her life. Sarah was talking a little bit about this. It's called temporal vertigo, which means that all of your life is available to you. And so it was like in a way, a kind of acting exercise. And that's the part of it from my side. The part of it from Sarah's side is that she made me and all of us feel absolutely safe so that we could do whatever it was that was asked of us.
That's incredible. And Sarah, astounding that you would be able to create that kind of space. Your ability to sort of sit just with the frame and let it happen, to not do fancy push-ins or even to do flashbacks. I mean, you literally just allow the present, sort of just what Kathleen was saying, to just as present as you were, Kathleen. Sarah, in a way, it feels like you were also just present, witnessing it. And again, as a dance between the two of you, it's quite something. I guess I wondered how you thought about how you wanted to shoot this relative to what Kathleen just said.
Yeah, first of all, just to the book that we're referencing is called Out of Time, The Pleasures and Perils of Aging by Lynn Siegel. And it's an extraordinary book and really impacted my thinking and writing and directing this. I guess the first choice that I made with our DP, Gabe Elder, I wanted the camera to be almost at the position of a caregiver, which is that you're distant enough to allow the individual you're caring for to feel a sense of physical autonomy and agency, but close enough to sort of pick up on the little details of gesture and posture and expression that tell you about their experience. Because so much of what you do as a caregiver is sort of decode these clues as to what the other person is experiencing.
Oh, wow.
And so I wanted the camera to sort of be in that position. So that meant that we're almost always at eye eye level with Ruth. In very sort of few exceptions are we not at her eye level. Because when you train to be a memory caregiver, one of the first things you learn is that postural differences can be very threatening, that if you are sort of standing above someone, that alone can agitate someone. So the first choice was we knew that we were going to be at that kind of caregiver distance. The second was, coming from making dance films, one of the things that I feel very strongly is sort of that Gabe, my DP, and I have a lot of conversations around is sort of what simplicity and economy of camera movement allows sort of micro movement in a performer's body to appear at scale. So for example, we wanted the tiniest sort of ripples in Kathy's emotion on her face or a small gesture of her hand to be this frame to be still enough that tiny movement, that tiny disturbance, when amplified on a screen, will feel sort of as magnetic as a full body dancing. So we knew very much, I had written it in mind with this sense of kind of still observation so that all of those gestures that, the tiniest movement could feel like that is the turning point in the scene rather than a line of dialogue or a sort of plot point. So yeah, I was thinking about it in this way as a sort of dance film.
That's fantastic.
I mean, when you talk about it as dance, there's a sense now that I'm thinking back, the caregivers know the steps. It's the family that really doesn't know exactly what they're doing in the dance. And I'm just struck by that all of a sudden because the people that you would think who know Ruth the best, have known her the longest, aren't really clear on how to act anymore around their mother or grandmother, as the case may be. And yet the people at the facility, by and large, do. Obviously, that's based on observation, but you did have to convey that to the people that were portraying this.
I mean, I think you're picking up on something that was really important for us to play with. Part of the difficulty for family members is that someone, your loved one has had more or less a fixed role in your life. They are growing and changing, but they are a parent, a spouse, a grandparent. And so what I found when I was a caregiver is that the sense of tragedy, the sort of narrative of tragedy came most from the loved ones around the person experiencing dementia, less so from the person experiencing it themselves.
Yes.
That my clients, not that they weren't experiencing tremendous grief and loss and difficulty, of course they were, but that their personal narrative didn't seem to be one of tragedy. And I think it's partially because that role, that sort of continuous role, all of a sudden changes. And so much of caregiving, when you're a trained caregiver, there's a sense of role play that you have to show up as whatever person, whatever dynamic or relationship the person you're caring for thinks you are or needs, and you kind of affirm that dynamic. And so I think, Kathy, I'm trying to remember if we ever talked about this explicitly on set, but that sense of kind of malleability and role play, there's a freedom to that role play that is hard to access when someone has had just one role in your life, I think.
Yeah.
I think that that's part of this question of temporal vertigo, because the thing that is true about particularly people with dementia is that they live in the moment. We who live in the ocean of memory are always directed by it, but there's a kind of freedom when it's gone. You're just living now. Because Sarah and her team had done such meticulous preparation because we had so little time to shoot the film, acting in this movie was exactly like that, because you stepped into every situation that was perfectly framed and discreet. A lot of people have asked whether the movie was, whether the dialogue was improvised. None of it was improvised except the words starting with F.
Which I love that sequence. Yeah.
But all the rest of it, every single moment was meticulously planned, which paradoxically made me feel freer.
When there were moments in Ruth's life where a shift happens, a sort of a noticeable kind of shift happens in the story. Now, again, Sarah, because the way you do it, it happens, we're watching it, it happens subtly. Because it's subtle in this case, it's loud, but we see essentially Ruth kind of clock a shift. Do you know what I mean? Like something, I don't want to give it away, but there's moments where there's a shift essentially in what's happened to her. You let the audience make the shift and you saw Ruth kind of notice it, but then there was nothing else, even though it was large. Does this make sense what I'm saying?
It does. I think it's something to do with Ruth's character, because Ruth was a cook, which meant that she called herself a cook not a chef.
Not a chef, yeah.
But it meant that she ran kitchens, and what you do when you run a kitchen is to watch and put out, you should excuse the expression, fires when they happen. And she was also a solitary person, a person who had lived alone except for her family life. But I think that her real life had been working in those kitchens. And so when she came into this community, her way of existing in a community was to watch it.
I don't know how to say it. It's just profound. It just knocked me out. I mean, so much knocked me out about this movie, but I found that to be particularly just from your performance as well. Just it's another, just like we just were with you every second. Like I literally couldn't take my eyes off you, and it just was. It's like it's like what W.C. Fields used to say. Don't act on the stage with kids or dogs.
Or dogs, right?
And why? Because they're so present and they're just looking around. W.C. Fields would not want to act with you either.
We had a cat that we called W.C. Fields because he was exactly like, mean as a snake. But
and drunk half the
in
time.
his way, and drunk.
Nose, right?
And then he left us and went to live somewhere that had because my husband was a sculptor, was a stone sculptor then, and Don Cat decided that it wasn't a good place to live, so he went up the street to someone who let him sit on a silk pillow. He came back once to see if we'd improved. We hadn't, and he left.
Cat who knows what she wants. Yeah.
Let's take a look at a clip. So we're going to look at a clip now from the film, A Familiar Touch.
Excuse me? Excuse me? You have a chip clip in your hair.
So?
It's for preserving chips.
Why are we discussing potato chips?
You actually filmed in a care facility?
We did, yeah. So we shot at Villa Gardens Continuing Care Community. And it's a fascinating community in that it was started by Ethel Percy Andrus, who was the founder of the AARP. And it began as a sort of care collective of women educators who were single and basically pooled their resources to create their own retirement community back in the 1920s. And it sort of continues that spirit. It's now part of Front Porch, which is a larger organization and chain of care communities, but it really attracts still a lot of educators and social workers. And so we knew we'd been looking for a place that kind of had this culture of lifelong learning, because in addition to being a care worker, I used to also be, I still am, a creative aging educator, and I teach filmmaking to older adults. And I felt so like cool. If we're going to tell a sort of anti-ageist coming of age film, then the production methodology needs to sort of match that ethos and to see older adults as talented and capacious and put them to work on our crew as well. So we facilitated a 5-week-long filmmaking workshop for the residents of Villa Gardens to learn filmmaking, soup to nuts. They made their own short films, and then everybody signed up for the department of the film they wanted to work on. So, many people are in the cast. For example, the chip clip lady is Sally White. I'll just say our wrap gift were chip clips, and everyone was walking around with them on their hair in homage to Sally's performance. But yeah, so the residents joined our cast, but they also joined our crew, based on where they found their talents lay and what they were interested in. So we had residents working in most of the departments of the film. And then during those 5 weeks, we treated it almost like an artist residency, and we got to know all of the different departments elements of the community. So met with landscaping, nursing, the food workers, et cetera, and got to really kind of understand the rhythms of the community there so that we could craft a production schedule that allowed us to integrate into work and life there. So as much as it's a scripted film, it's also kind of this anti-ageist pedagogical experiment and this intergenerational artist residency. And we could not have made this without their collaboration.
It's remarkable.
It is remarkable.
Kathleen, I have a question, which is your dearest friend is or was going through this. And you are, you've now essentially had the opportunity to kind of go into the center of this experience by virtue of what you've, the making of it. We'll all be there soon, in some form or fashion, whether it's dementia or, aging is a part of this journey. Is there something that you that it left you with, that you've learned, that you've gathered by virtue of kind of now, the road you've walked through?
Yes. And both the experience with Sybil and my time at Villa Gardens has led me to the same conclusion, which is that the people who are essential to allowing this to happen with dignity and grace are the caregivers, the care workers. They make it possible for us to live. And the care workers in our society are terribly undervalued. For some reason, this work, which is the most delicate and the most essential, the work that we use in our lives, those of us who are privileged to be able to do so, from the beginning, we hand our children off to other people, to the end, when we hand our parents or our grandparents off to other people, is undervalued and is not considered noble work. For some reason, noble work is some peculiar notion of that somehow the work in factories and mines, which was murderous to the people who did it, is somehow more noble than the work of providing a life of dignity and possibility for all of us. And I think that's the lesson I took away.
Sarah, or both of you, I'd love to hear your feeling about the public reaction to the film, where it premiered, when it premiered, and as difficult as it is to watch yourself on screen. What is it like to see other people watching you on screen?
Kathy and I are laughing because we premiered at the Venice Film Festival last September, and the response was beyond our wildest dreams. And I say that as someone who has very wild dreams and is unapologetically ambitious. It still went beyond what I thought was going to happen.
Well, I saw your Golden Lion, so it's pretty incredible. It's pretty.
Take a bow. Take a bow, please.
We have to in the interest of accuracy, I have one black lion, and Sarah has a black lion and a red lion.
Okay.
They're very beautiful. Perfectly swell, but they're not golden.
They're black.
Pedro got the gold one.
Very good. Very good.
It was extraordinary. I mean, this film was so hard to make. I mean, I'm sure you've heard this story a million times from other independent filmmakers in America. The intersection of ageism and sexism means that a character study of an older woman is not something that our industry's funders are rushing to support. And so it took many years of trying to figure out how to make this outside of not only the Hollywood system, but the sort of independent system. We had to find kind of funding outside of the independent film world itself. Yeah, it took a decade to make. And so time you get to that place of finishing the film after that many years, it's really hard to conceive of what you've created and to have any distance from it. And we had a lot of sort of festival rejections on the way to Venice, and really had no idea what the response was going to be. We premiered in a sold-out 1,500 seat theater that had a 6+
the oldest film festival in the world, by the way.
Oldest film festival in the world. We had a standing ovation that went on so long that the festival cut it off and said, "I'm sorry, we have to do the Q&A." I mean, I think Kathy and I both kept saying to each other, like, "Have you left your body? Are you fully disembodied? Yeah, are you fully disembodied?" I mean, it was so wild. And then also just the process since then has been so beautiful because we didn't know if it would resonate outside of America. Of course, aging and care are universal, but it is sort of specifically a story of an American woman. Hearing people around the world on the festival circuit say that they saw themselves in Ruth at all ages, hearing young people say they saw themselves in Ruth. A woman came up to me in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, a 20-something woman, and said she saw herself in Ruth. I mean, just seeing people respond to it around the world at all ages has been the most gratifying and beautiful experience, and has affirmed for me that we need more collective conversations around aging and care. Because when people come and talk to me after they've seen the film, they talk to me with this almost sort of whispered confessional tone, as if it is something private and secret. And I almost want to say in these Q&As, like, you all should be talking to each other, because everybody has an experience with aging and care, no matter where you are in your own life journey, no matter what side of the kind of caregiving relationship. So it started off with this kind of wild Italian bang and has become just a really moving process of hearing people's stories. Yeah, Kathy, what about for you? I mean, I know we were both like, what's going on? It was wild.
No, it was completely wild. And as I said earlier, I was relieved to find that it was my friend Sybil on the screen and not me, so that I could watch it. But I've only been able to watch it twice. I can't see it anymore. There's that odd thing that when you're in the theater, the thing that's happening is happening in the moment. Whereas when you make a movie or do something on TV or whatever, there's a distance from it. Quite often you just make the thing and there's distance from it and you see it once. But this wonderful ride, because the movie has been received in the way it has been wonderful and completely unexpected. One of the things that Sarah and I have in common, and we keep saying that it's a young filmmaker and an old actor, or that collaboration, and it worked out all right. But the other thing is that we both have a deep connection to Italy. And so that our world premiere was at the Venice Film Festival was in a way our dream, the best thing that could possibly happen.
And Kathy said to me when we wrapped filming, we were saying goodbye to each other and not knowing when she was about to go on a trip. We weren't going to see each other for many months. Kathy said to me, I'll see you in Venice, Sarah. And I was like, yeah, sure, Kathy.
No
I'll see you in
really?
Venice.
That's amazing.
And it happened.
The experience of the film is a film about aging. As you say, it is a coming of age story. I wonder if you've come up with people sort of saying, oh, that's depressing, I don't want to see that, or I don't want to walk into that conversation, or that. My experience is that it was so much more than that, and it isn't depressing. I mean, it's deeply moving, and it hits rumbles deep inside me, and I've been haunted by it since I've watched it in the best sense, the way great films do. But I wonder how you've been able to speak to this sort of potential perception of it being kind of a depressing movie, because it's more than that.
My experience with, there are lots of people who, tell your friends that the movie's going to be showing and that they should come to see it, and they say, oh, I don't know, but no, I'll come and see you. And then they're surprised afterward.
Yeah.
And it's often the case with the audiences who have come, who seem to be a self-selecting group. They've decided to come, but for a variety of reasons, and they're always surprised. It isn't what they expected.
That's part of why I like to describe it as a coming-of-age film, that we're all always coming of age, that experience of the relationship you have with yourself in these moments of transition, that is an experience we have over and over again throughout our lives. I like to talk about it as a coming-of-age film because it challenges the idea that a film about aging is depressing, because we don't think about coming-of-age films as themselves being depressing. It's a film about aging because Ruth is herself aging. We all are, though. I'd also say it's just as much a film about our sense-making and our sort of sensory experience of the world around us and what that says about who we are. I think it's just as much a film about desire. To me, so much of the film is about Ruth's desire and what an important part of who we are that is. So much of the process of writing and kind of planning out the film, we were talking before about creating a shot list that allowed us to just sort of be with Ruth's body. In the script, I had kind of tracked all of these moments where Ruth touches different textures and materials. And Gabe, our DP, and I had sort of created what we called these sort of echoes, where we would use the exact same framing and lens and optical diffusion sometimes whenever there was sort of a similar texture or gesture and contact between Ruth and the world around her. One of the ways we get into this sort of narrative of decline with memory loss, of saying someone's someone's no longer themselves or they're slipping away is by seeing selfhood as something that is purely cognitive. It's the I think, therefore I am of it all.
Right.
But I think our experience of self is just as much inscribed in our other senses. It is how we touch, taste, smell ourselves in the world. We make sense of ourselves literally through our senses. And so I think this is a film that is also just as much about that sensory experience of self and sort of positioning a non-cognitive form of self. And I think it's just as much that as it is a film about aging.
I love what you just said about that there is a living sensorial human there who is feeling and experiencing life. You've extended such respect and kind of honored that space. And again, this portal, this transition, this tunnel, it's not a hard end. It has a float to it that allows us to kind of sort of honor that, as you say, this coming of age. And it's so beautiful. It's something we don't talk about, which is towards the end of our life.
It's life affirming.
Life affirming, exactly. Hope and engagement. And it's so beautiful.
For me, that tone isn't sort of just me trying to make a film that isn't depressing, but it comes also from my experience as a care worker. I would notice that my clients' children would sort of say in these heavy tones, how was today? As if there was this sort of assumption that the day had been really hard. And of course there would be hard moments. But one of the things I saw as a care worker was there was so much joy and poetry and absurdity. Like there were all of these sort of different dynamics to a day, that it wasn't just an experience of tragedy, and that it was something also that the residents of Villa Gardens were really clear about. I had to pitch the film to their residents and their staff, and they're the ones who greenlit it, basically.
Wow.
We weren't going to proceed without their consent. And the residents said to me, and the staff as well, it has to be funny, but we can't be laughing at them. We have to laugh with them. And the sense of humor needs to be, absurd, but not cute. There were all of these sort of tonal specificities that those who live this know. And they said, you have to, these are the things you have to get right. So I think what you're describing of this sort of life-affirming, non-depressing quality is very much a reflection of those collaborators as well.
That's
and
fantastic.
they were there all the time as our reality check.
Did they get final cut?
No, I don't give that away. We hold that close.
I'm glad you held your line there.
So the film is going to be opening. I know it's opening here in Los Angeles at this theater on June 27th. I believe you're going to be here for the opening.
And Kathleen as well.
both
Both of you. Fabulous. That's great.
Excellent.
What about in New York? Is that the week ahead of Los Angeles?
June 20th opens at Film Forum.
June 20th at Film Forum, June 27th here in Los Angeles, and hopefully then around the rest of the country. You can get information at Music Box Films. So hopefully they will have a list of when and where it's opening.
Yes, the Music Box Films website, or also familiartouchfilm.com will have all of our showtimes and tickets to a movie theater near you.
All right, fabulous. And you want to give us an Instagram handle or anything like that?
I don't do
Yes.
social media, but Sarah does.
I'm Kathy's social media intern, and you can find us at Familiar Touch.
Excellent.
Terrific.
Excellent.
Yeah.
For any Academy voters out there, do not fill out your ballots until you have seen this film. I'm just going to say that right now.
Well said. Well said.
You guys.
Yeah. Thank you for coming and talking to us. Thank you for making this beautiful film.
Thank you for having us.
And we just wish you the best with the run and with the open and with all the audiences get to enjoy it in the weeks ahead.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's going to be a challenge, not because of the film or just, you're outside of the festival environment and that creates certain challenges. But we're going to try and help spread the word about this film because it's, it's a summer movie, coming of age movie in the summer. I think that's perfect.
It's perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Shot in Pasadena. So it's a hometown movie for Los Angeles.
For Los Angeles, but it's definitely a film for everybody around this country dealing with these with these issues or just wanting to understand these issues, because I think it really illuminates and educates in a way that almost a documentary couldn't.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And takes something that's scary and makes it not scary, makes it even a positive.
And there are many laughs. We are very happy that there are many laughs. Because people don't laugh in the movies too much, but even in Italian, people laughed in translation.
The Italians did
excellent.
that.
That's excellent.
Sarah, you wanted to say one last thing?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I like to describe it as a film that's for anyone who's aging, anyone who's caring, and anyone who's been cared for. And in that way, I don't think there's a single person who's outside of one of those categories.
Amen.
So I think in that way, it's for all of us. But yeah, thank you for talking to us. It's been a joy, and thanks for having us at the Lemley, Greg. We're really, really excited.
Honored.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us here for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, please like, please subscribe, and please make sure to share. We want to get as many people to know about this film and to see this film as possible.
Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time. Our show was produced by Raphael Sparge with on-site producer Norrin Dickerson. Supervising producers are Thomas Cassetta and Miles McCreary. Our show was edited by Gabriel Lemley and sound mixed by Thomas Cassetta. Our musical theme is composed by Isabel Engman and Gerardo Garcia Jr. Marketing by Gabriel Lemley. Show graphics by Jenna DeAngelis. Additional marketing and web design by Stephanie Peters. Filmed at the historic Lemley Royal Theater in Los Angeles, California. See you next time on Inside the Arthouse. If you like today's show, please consider subscribing to our channel to learn more on Inside the Arthouse.